We are still in the octave of Christmas, so once again, Merry Christmas to all of you. And today, Mother Church asks us to expand our reflection. Last weekend, during all Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, we meditated on this child in this crib, the incarnation, God himself, the eternal Son entering into his creation. It takes a long time to get your head around who that child is. But then we expand it today to the Holy Family, Mary and Joseph. Now it is expanded to include all of us here, and hopefully not just a marriage or a tribe or a nation, but a kingdom that is we're asked to have and strive to have holy families. Having said that, I have to say, as I look at the readings for this weekend, there are always 4 readings for any Sunday Mass: the first reading, the Psalm, the second reading, and the Gospel. But the first 3 readings are not about the Holy Family. It's about another family, that initial covenantal family with Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac, just after Adam and Eve. And so I'd like to talk about that family for a second, because they are a precursor to the Holy Family. They give us an insight in what it means to be a missionary family, that they're not insulated. It's not just about them. Because Isaac, their child, will be the father of Jacob, who give birth to the 12 tribes of Israel. Oh, they're meant for so much more. And as we look at Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac, that little family, that little holy family, are they a perfect family? No. Are they a happy family? Not always. Are they a healthy family? Sometimes. But they are a missionary family. Abraham knew that he had to think outside of himself and trust in God. Perfect family. Well, we don't really have too many movies and children's stories like we do about the Holy Family. We don't have too many children's stories about Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac. If we did, it would be R-rated, because lots of sin and mistakes happen in their family. We don't know if they were always happy. They know they had to move. They know they dealt with, sadly enough, they dealt with infidelity on Abraham's part, and Sarah had a role in it. We don't know how healthy they were. I don't know if they were vegans and were drinking soy milk. I don't know. I doubt it. But Abraham knew that he was meant to go on mission, and that Isaac was a special child meant for so much more. That would made them a missionary family. So I would say it made them a holy family. But Abraham, it all starts with him. Our brothers in the Muslim faith and the Jewish faith all consider him the father of all of us. But he was not a great prophet. He wasn't even a great husband. He was an okay father. But he tried to be a good father and a husband. He tried to. And I think we can look at him and recognize that families aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to be places of training, places, schools of holiness, that oftentimes crushing decisions have to happen in families that are not always rainbows and ponies, that there'll be a lot of tears, sometimes arguments, sometimes both. So let's look at Abraham's family and what God asked of him. First thing he asked them to do was leave. He had to leave Ur, I think it was called, and go to Canaan. That's 300 miles. He had to uproot his family. He had to uproot everything he knew and move and just have faith in God. He doesn't know where he was going. And if any of you have ever uprooted from your hometown, you know how hard that is. It's not all rainbows and ponies, especially if you have children. To get them to another place, lots of tears, lots of arguments sometimes, lots of strife. It is not easy. It is exhausting. Also, Abraham and his wife, Sarah, struggle with infertility most of their life. Now, we have a culture now that sees children as a burden, a whole industry that holds off children. But in the ancient world, to be sterile was considered a curse. They were considered a curse by God. What had we done? To have children was a blessing. To have more children was more of a blessing. They struggled with that. They had to trust in God they would be given a child, one child, Isaac. But Abraham had another child from another woman, Ishmael, and that is a whole nother story, a whole nother drama that in some ways we're still dealing with today. So he uprooted. They struggle with infertility. And I think this last one should hit us all very hard. It is the most famous story, I think, when it comes to Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac. It is a story of God asking Abram to sacrifice his son. That story is still a mystery to most people, even theologians. It seems unreasonable. It seems cruel. It seems unconscionable. How would he ask him to do that? We are still struggling with that request from God. But Abram shows us a few things. We know he suffered in that decision. But he trusted in God. But he also shows us that salvation comes through families. Salvation is mediated by families. But families are not God. We do not worship families. Now you might think, well, Father, we don't do that. There's all kinds of ways that whenever our Catholic faith and family, what shall we say, requirements run into each other, like a weekend softball tournament, and we play select. Which one gets out of the way? When we're staying at family's house and it's Sunday and we don't want to rock the boat, so we miss Mass or don't go to confession. Again, which one gets out of the way? Because for Abram, his loyalty to God came before his loyalty to his own family. And he shows that in this sacrifice. And we know that the angel said no, stilled his hand. He didn't sacrifice Isaac. He didn't have to. But it shows us, too, his loyalty to God. And as we read in Hebrews, Abraham had faith that even if he did take his son's life, that God would raise him from the dead. It all points back. And we as Christians should hear God saying to Abram, don't sacrifice your son, I will sacrifice mine. And you know what this is going to feel like. What it means to be a father with children who suffer. As we celebrate the feast day of the Holy Family, we meditate on this family and recognize that we are a bigger family in the church. And what are families meant to be? What are households meant to be? The church uses the term domestic church. What is a domestic church? That you should have a Catholic home. And there's ways of doing that. You know, I drive up to people's homes and I can tell immediately if they're Dallas Cowboy fans, just like that. At Christmas, I can drive through neighborhoods and I can tell who the Jehovah's Witnesses are. There's lights and lights, dark lights, lights. They're the JWs. They let you know. But a domestic church is supposed to be a training ground, a place where we learn forgiveness, discipline, and charity. It's not necessarily for family's sake. It's not just to have a family, we're a family, we stay together no matter what. No, it's meant for mission. Meant for mission. And parents, you raise your children to prepare them to move on for the next step of their life. Children are not pets. Pets are for us. They serve us. That's why you keep them in a box when you leave. That'll get you arrested if you do that with children. But you prepare children for the next stage of their life. I think I'd like to try a few things here this morning. I enjoy watching movies. I think there's some great movies out there. Some of the movies I can recommend, some I can't. I've had some luck with movies, so I'm going to try again. There's a fantastic movie that came out, and I want to say 1989, called Glory. It's about the Civil War with Denzel Washington and Matthew Broderick. It's about a black regiment in the Union Army and how they joined to fight against the South, to fight for freedom. But most of them were ex-slaves, former laborers, but there was a few of them who were like from Boston high class, and they joined the army. And they were kind of coddled most of their life. And there's a scene where one of the soldiers who's been kind of coddled his whole life is in basic training with a tough Irish sergeant, and he's pushing him, and he's breathing, he's throwing up, he can't keep up, he's suffering. And then the colonel says, Sergeant O'Reilly, aren't you being a little hard on some of them? To which the sergeant goes, he's a friend of yours. Yes, we grew up together. And he looks at them man to man and said, let him grow up some more. Let him grow up some more. Because he was being trained not to just be a family, but to be on mission. It's important that a military group work together. But they want to save each other's lives, and as families in the church, we want everybody to go to heaven. But also recognizing, as they do then, that there's an enemy out there, and they're training. If you know anything about the Civil War, the South has actually better soldiers and better generals. And if you look at the evil one and his army, he's very organized. They're very organized. If I could use another movie, I really can't recommend these movies. They're both great and evil. The Godfather. The Godfather is an example of how family can become worship the family. If you ever hear them talk, I have, when they'll say in their sort of Chicago, New York accent, Johnny, the most important thing is family, Forget about it. That's how they talk. I've heard them say that to me, the most important thing is family. We say, well, wait a minute, isn't your relationship with Christ more important? Well, we'll get to that. There's a scene in Godfather 2 where Michael is taking over the family. He has an older brother named Fredo. And they're negotiating to buy a casino because, they uprooted from New York to go to Vegas because there's more money in Vegas. And he's negotiating with Mo Green about buying his casino, and Mo Green doesn't want to sell, and Fredo steps in. It turns into a little kerfluffle. To make a long story short, Michael looks at his brother and lights his cigarette. Michael, you're my brother and I love you, but never take sides against the family again. Because we're a family and that's all that matters. Little did he know he was a murderer and about to cheat and all kinds of things going on. Because all that is not about mission, it's about money, power, wealth. And things can become somewhat incestuous even. Because as Christians, as Christian families, we are meant for mission. Not just maintenance, we're meant for mission. I think sometimes churches, families, even businesses get caught up in just maintaining. Let's do just a little, just keep it together. Let's not cause any riffle. Let's not cause any conflicts. Everybody just be nice. Make sure no one's felt uncomfortable. Make sure there's no divisions. And when you do that, all kinds of divisions happen. But if you keep your eye on Christ and what he sends us, as the Father sent me, so I send you, there will sometimes be divisions at tables. There'll be sometimes when parents have to send their kid to their room. And husbands and wives and mothers and fathers have various roles. Now, I know there are people in here who've gone through the hell of divorce. There are people in here who were raised and are being raised in single-parent family. That's hard. That's hard, and we're asked to accompany them. to strengthen them, to be there for them, to recognize that that's not normal. It's like walking around with one leg. That means you're handicapped. We do our best to help them. But to recognize that also mother and fathers have roles to play. That women are meant to comfort and soothe. Men are meant to send out and discipline. You could say it like this. I remember when my father was disciplining me and my mother saying, well, don't kill him. And my grandfather disciplining us, my Spanish side, my grandfather disciplining us, and my grandmother going, pobrecito. My grandfather said, his backside is mine now. Because I think in a very profound way, women are meant to coddle and men are meant to throttle. But if you only have one of those, it can be difficult. It makes the missionary aspect of your faith, the human formation, difficult. So we celebrate normal. We celebrate healthy, holy, happy families. What does a perfect family look like? I don't know. But I know what a holy family looks like. A holy family reminds us that we are meant for mission. And if we become missionary as a church, if we have missionary families, then we can have and be holy families.